Hello and welcome to In the Weeds. We're recording live from the Pickeyweedz Esoteric Occult Boutique, located just south of Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, in beautiful South Abington Township. Pickeyweedz is the largest and most diverse boutique of its kind in Northeast Pennsylvania, with an increasingly wide variety of items for many traditions.
In addition to items for sale, Pickeyweedz hosts a wide variety of classes, events, and community-driven gatherings throughout the year. Pickeyweedz is located at 105 Layton Road, South Abington Township, PA. Open Wednesday through Sunday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. More information can be found at www.pickeyweedz.com. That's Pickeyweedz.com, or on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. In the Weeds is the official podcast for Pickeyweedz, where we strive to bring the community together with topics of interest, guest speakers, and informative discussions to benefit the entire community.
If you'd like to be a guest speaker, either live or remote call-in, please visit www.pickeyweedz.com. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, find In the Weeds podcast guest application, click it, copy and paste the text into an email with your contact information, and send it to us at pickeyweedz@gmail.com.
Now let's get in the weeds.
Hey guys, welcome back. I think we're episode 5 now?
Episode 5.
I'm here with John. My name is Tay, and we are your hosts and the co-owners of Pickeyweedz. And tonight, we're going to be talking about methods of divination. I know a couple of you asked for this. So, divination is defined in the Oxford Language Dictionary as the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or unknown by supernatural means. So, not everything is an omen, guys. Omens. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. Well, actually, there's a lot more than a couple. There's a ton of different divination methods. You know, some of our ancestors, you can read about in the Greek writings, the Roman writings, using omens and using animal augury and bird flights.
Reading entrails.
Oh, yeah, reading the entrails.
Which is actually the intestines of, animals and their enemies.
That's a little too dirty for booking a room at Pickeyweedz, just
unless you bring a lot of plastic. Dexter.
Yeah, you have to Dexter the room. No, just kidding. And there's, of course, astrology, which goes back millennia.
Like to Mesopotamia. Yeah.
And we'll do a deep dive on astrology when we can get Lindsay or
Mark in. Yeah,
Mark, somebody that's an actual astrologer. That's one thing that we have a surface knowledge of, but I would much rather have a guest on here that can really get into the knowledge of it.
What I know can only confuse you. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But go ahead.
So the first one on our list after all of that is one that's kind of in my wheelhouse. It's pendulum or dowsing or water witching. When I was little, this is when I learned it, is when a local man who did water witching came out to help us find a spot to dig a well. And he would use willow and hazel rods. He would use the copper dowsing rods. But the fascinating thing was when he gave me a plumb bob and taught me how to use it.
The hell is a plumb bob?
Every one of you guys in construction, or you ladies in construction out there, know what the heck a plumb bob is. But yeah, he handed me a plumb bob, which if you come to the store, you can usually find that we have some of those little brass pendulums in stock, the really heavy brass pendulums that are based on the plumb bob. So come in and take a look at those because they're kind of interesting in how well they work. That, in my opinion, they work just as well any day as a dowsing rod. Every now and again we'll have dowsing rods, but for cleansing, for foretelling, for finding things, I've often used a raw pendulum or a plumb bob.
Yeah, I mean, typically a plumb bob's used in construction.
Yeah.
To make sure that thing you installed is plumb.
Level and plumb.
But yeah, it's got a little deeper history too.
So it originally, where did this originate? This pendulum and rod dowsing. It goes way, way back because you can read about it when it was outlawed by the Christians, correct?
Yeah.
The water witching?
It's about 4,000 years old. But,
yeah.
anything they don't understand. So it's devil. It's a devil.
I'm just trying to help you find the water. Jeez.
Just keep digging holes. Sooner
Get
or
a
later
grip,
you find
y'all.
it and you have a yard full of holes. It's much easier to get the old fellow with his rods out.
Yeah.
That sounded weird.
There's a lot of geologists that kind of use something similar too. So they need not be thumbing their nose at it. But, it's something that's gone on for a long time. And when you lived out in the country, it was much cheaper to have a guy come water witch than it was to have somebody come drill your property to bits trying to find water. So that's what we did.
Yeah, so there's the copper rods too. You've seen them; they'll go out, and when they get near water, the rods will cross, or they'll steer the operator in the direction of where the underground spring is. And a lot of people use those rods for divination too. They'll be yes or no. Depending, similar to a pendulum in which you assign it. When you get your new pendulum, you're going to consecrate it, and then you're going to come to an agreement on which direction means yes, which direction means no, which is I don't know or not clear. Or you could use a mat that has those already, inscribed on a mat or a pendulum board. So the pendulum is still we sell pendulums like crazy, right? It's still very much in use and very popular.
I actually train mine. I'll actually hold it in my hand. I actually put the notch, the little ball or bead on the end of the pendulum chain in between the first two digits of my pointer and middle finger, my social finger. And I actually was taught by the dowser to hold my elbow and make myself into what am I trying to say here? Fulcrum. And let it just hang so that I'm not cheating myself or moving and causing the movement of the pendulum. And I will focus and concentrate on the pendulum and try to make it move. And I will think to it, which way is yes? Which way is no? Which way is I don't know? And then in later uses, I will ask it which way cleanse, which way banish, which way bless. And I actually walk around the store sometimes looking for, some people call them cold spots. I call them kind of vibrational spots where you can actually feel. You can feel a little energy and a little static tingle. And I'll cleanse them until they're gone using a pendulum.
So pendulum, at least in our tradition, was always considered a safer form of divination than, say, a Ouija or a spirit board, talking board. Mainly because it's just you and the weight that's suspended from the chain on your fingers that's saying yes, no, maybe. It's still, purportedly the entity or spirit or whoever you're talking to that is actually moving the weight towards yes, no, I don't know. But the Ouija and or spirit board, you're actually taking part in that by placing your fingers on the planchette. So it's using part of your energy, right? So we've all known the friend that moves the planchette at the parties and freaks everybody out, right? But we've actually, in practice had the device work way better than we thought it would.
Yeah.
And it was not someone moving it. It was whatever was communicating through the planchette, moving between the two people. And that's one reason why you don't ever use a Ouija alone. And at least that's the way that I was taught you're a lot stronger if there's two of you and one spirit as opposed to one-on-one.
And then you have two readers, two scryers as well. And somebody can always be watching the room, and seeing if anything's coming through, because this is an actual opening of a portal or I'll say, an energy between you and the spirits. So you're actually going to be sharing the space. But it's not something to take lightly. You can lose your mind.
Yeah, it's made by Parker Brothers, but it's not a toy.
Yeah, it didn't start as that. It started way, way back in the 1800s. So it was the talking board. It came from a little gadget that was, what was it, used in China, I do believe?
They called it Fuji planchette writing. It was from around 1100 AD.
Yeah, it was really neat. It's just like a little heart-shaped planchette with a little writing device inserted in it, and two people would use it and lay it on rolls of paper, flatten out the rolls, ask their questions, and it would actually do the writing for them. Much in the way that the planchette now on the common modern day board spells everything out, but it wrote it out, and you kind of had to decipher it, and that's where it held from. And it's been known to pull spirits through. I can't for the life of me remember the lady's name that came through, but back in the 1800s. One lady used it, and she bought through a woman who she wrote down everything that this lady said, and the writings had some serious high praise and critical acclaim, and she channeled it through a Ouija board.
Yeah, Ouija is very, very similar to full-on channeling, right?
Very.
It's a little bit safer because you're using a planchette and you're using another person. You should always have two people with all of their hands on the planchette at the same time. It's a little safer because you're not, channeling is where you're actually allowing an entity into your system, into your body, and you're speaking through you. And there's trance channelers. We've had one last year. She's coming back mid-October. And the spirit that comes through her is a completely different mannerism than her normal self. I mean, it's a completely different voice. It is not a made-up, make-believe voice. It's completely different. Everyone can make voices, right? This one is not like that. Her face changes. Her inflection changes. The entity is actually in control. And so this is a dangerous practice, and one you should learn from someone that is actually trained in this art rather than reading a book and trying it yourself. This is one of those advanced tactics that really utilize caution. And the same with the Ouija, because we see parents wanting to buy them for their children.
Oh, goodness.
It's,
caution against that.
Yeah, The Exorcist was a movie, but it was based on a real tale, right? A real story, a real event. It was a little boy, not a little girl.
A boy named Robbie.
And used the board by himself, and he's a child. Don't buy a Ouija board for your kids. It's not a toy. You might as well buy them a 357 Magnum and hand it to them. I mean, it's that dangerous, okay? It's not dangerous in the hand of trained practitioners. It's not as dangerous, I'll say. But it's still, you utilize caution. Anything to do with channeling, anything to do with opening yourself up and allowing something else to control, whether it's a planchette or your whole self, there's a potential risk there.
Yeah.
And you should, not that you should be necessarily afraid, I don't think is the right word, but
no,
you should definitely utilize some caution and good common sense.
It's like the practices we were talking about in one of the earlier podcasts of, the yogic and leaving the body and stuff like that. You're opening yourself up to let other energy into the body that might not have, the best thoughts about being in your body, or might not have your best interest in mind. And then the next thing you know, you're pent up in an asylum, if they still have those. Do they still have those? Because we've got really poor mental health in this country. But you know what I'm saying. You've been sent to the hospital and you're in that ward. And then you're on medication, and then you're in therapy for decades, just trying to work out what the heck just happened to you.
Well, it's because you never know what's going to come through. It could be a peaceful spirit that just, or maybe an ancestor. Who knows, right? But at the same time, you have an equal chance for that to be. Not all spirits are of the live, laugh, love variety.
No,
and though you may be attracted to left-hand path or the darker side of things,
there are darker things there. There are divine intelligences there. People like to call it demonic, but those are actually divine beings. They're actually a divine intelligence. They've probably got more of your, if you've come for the right reasons and you're talking to them for the right reasons, they probably take it more to heart and have your, betterment in mind more so than wanting to hurt you. But then there are sludge beings in between there, lower astral beings that will attach to you and like, oh my God, look what I got a free ride, and it's not fun.
And the spirit, there's a lot of liars.
Yeah.
There's a lot of spirits that are liars.
Hi, I'm Belial.
And,
Belial.
you can think you have I worked with Belial last night. No, you didn't. Mm-mm. You worked with some sludge thing from the nether region that's lying and having a great time at your expense.
Some little vampiric
little
entity. Yeah.
So, always better to work with someone that has had experience with channeling or with the use of a talking board, and never ever do it by yourself. We actually, and Chris will laugh when he hears this, one of our Mother Coven members, when she was a child, she told us this tale of when she was a child, her parents wouldn't buy her the spirit board, so she drew one on her floor of her bedroom, like a 3 foot, 4 foot spirit board, written in, I don't know if she used makeup or what, and she claims that she saw a physical manifestation of an entity at the end of her hall, and it was really, really tiny, like the size of a kitten. In every step it took, it grew several inches in size until it was taller than the door frame. And she's throwing salt at the door, freaking out. But yeah, these things happen, and it doesn't happen. A lot of people are like, oh, there's a knocking in my house, it's haunted. Well, it's probably your pipes. You need to check that. But these things do happen, and there's documented cases of it. And any practitioner who has participated in an evocation or an invocation, if they've done it for a number of years and had some success, then they've seen physical manifestation. And it may not be a whole body. It may be a body of light. It may be a body of mist. I've had the mist in my house. It filled the whole house with black mist. It just depends on... And my windows were shut, okay? I didn't live in a swamp.
You walked through a spirit smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, the white lady.
Rude.
Everybody's seen the white lady. Hovering over the bed. I had just worked a double shift. I was tired. So you have the whole horror movie scene and floating above the bed. Oh, and get the fuck out of the way.
How do you know when you're jaded?
The bed. Did you not see that? Yeah, fucking sorry ass. I'm tired.
Yeah. Go away. Or I shall be forced to taunt you a second time.
And, you tell people this and they're like, yeah, okay, why don't you guys just roll another one? But, really, truly.
These things happen.
They do. And the spirit world exists right beside ours. You have a veil between the worlds that's pretty substantial, except during certain points of the year.
And bear in mind, all time is now.
Yeah, it's happening.
Past, present, and future are all occurring right now. Time is not linear.
So divination is kind of a form of reaching through that veil and trying to communicate. And it could be communicating with a departed ancestor. It could be communicating with a spirit, one of your familiar spirits. It could be communicating with anything that wants to talk, and you may or may not want to talk to them. Even with the trance channeling medium, several relatives came forward, and the participants were like, "Tell that bitch to fuck off,
go away."
And hey, I don't blame you. I don't know your story. I'd
be that way with a few of mine. I
got a few that can kick rocks too. Yeah. I'm glad that you figured it out now that you crossed over, but fuck off.
Yeah, really.
You were a prick when you were here, and I'm not ready for happy shiny right now.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, but that's exactly what divination is you're reaching through the veil. People channel doing tarot. People channel in voodoo. I'm not a voodoo practitioner. We'll have one on here to discuss more. But they take the God into themselves. You'll see. You can look it up anywhere on the interweb.
Yes.
You'll see the divine coming through, speaking. And they'll dance, and it's a sacred dance, and it's amazing. It's beautiful to watch. And, of course, there are skeptics like you're just mentally ill or you're just this or that. Well, okay.
Until it happens to them.
Yeah. Yeah. The same people are eating the flesh and blood every Sunday too. But okay, I digress.
But just remember when you're messing with any of these things, whether you're playing at it or whether you're going at it seriously, space is everything. Preparation is everything. Prepare the space as if it were a ritual. Protect the space as if it were a ritual. Cleanse the space afterwards, especially if it's in your house. As most people do this at home, I've noticed that. So make a separate space for it. Make sure that it's treated as a temple. Make sure it's cleansed after. And make sure you don't store the objects together.
Oh, no.
I have seen the planchette move on its own. So, yeah.
I've had the glass crack.
Yes. Oh, my God.
We had the glass crack. We've had the glass turn solid black.
Yes.
We've had it fly off the board.
Yes. So don't take this lightly.
Yeah.
And it is a tool just like any other tool, but it's also a tool that works very, very well. So.
You notice when you come into the store, the talking boards are up out of children's reach. Do not buy these for your kids. They are not toys. This is a magical tool.
It can lead to a very mentally ill child or worse.
It's the same as a dagger. It's the same, look, these are implements that are used for certain purposes. This is a divination tool. And it is learning to channel. It is learning to channel with training wheels because you have another person there with you.
That's good. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So, but again, we cannot stress enough. They need to be stored in the same place that firearms are.
Yes. Up and away. Locked away from your babies, because it's like handing them a dagger or a loaded pistol. So don't do that. Yeah.
So along with channeling, there's a technique called automatic writing. It's also called psychography. This was really popular. It's been popular for years, but it goes back to, even John Dee and Edward Kelly. And if you don't know who they are, reference earlier episodes about learning history. Enochian practice, language, kind of came from the automatic writing techniques. So according to them, the angels dictated via automatic writing the Enochian language and grammar. And this is a complete system. This isn't just some symbols that they just jotted down. Yeah, there you go. No, this is it has grammatical rules. Mm-hmm. Everything is extremely well detailed. And, some people disbelieve it, and that's your right. But...
And I've done a lot of trance channeling writing and automatic writing, and it works out quite well. I've even had pictures drawn of, you remember the case?
Oh, yeah, the remote viewing.
Yeah. And I've done a lot of controlled remote viewing over the years. And one case I drew a landscape where a murdered girl actually was. So, and then found out later about 2 or 3 weeks after the drawing, that's exactly where they found her, and it was right nearby where I worked every single day.
Yeah, and it comes from the technique of automatic writing, and it's again a form of channel, right? So you're opening yourself up. You're allowing. Some people claim it's just your subconscious. Some people claim I believe that it is. If you're doing it correctly, and you're not seeking to influence it, if you're just letting it flow through you, as Mary Ellen calls it, hollow bone. It's the entity, the spirit, whatever is trying to communicate with you is communicating through your hand, writing on a piece of paper. And a lot of time it may be just scribble, and then sometimes it may be clear penmanship, it may be symbols or sigils. You never know what's going to come through. And, then you take that and look at it and see if it's just gibberish or if there's something that might make some logical sense there.
And if you want to try it, set some rules for yourself first about your triggers, about what you might think about. Write that stuff down so that kind of negates it and line through it. And then set yourself some rules for what the scribbles that you might make might mean. Like, give yourself some topography markers, like make sharp points for high mountains or low humps for rolling hills or water. Make it in the shape of a wave. If you see it, then you know it's relating to water. Give yourself some guidelines. Make it really interesting. That's what we do. And if we're doing CRV, control remote viewing. So give yourself some guidelines and kind of follow those as you're writing, and keep them aside. But the first thing you want to do is anything that you think of before the session, you want to write that down and line through it, because that's not it. You want to let it speak through you, not speak to it, or not infuse it with your ideology of what you might be seeing.
Yeah, and automatic writing, not to be confused with the scribe's function. Right.
No.
So generally, when we channel, Tay will be the scribe, and she's writing down everything. The purpose of the scribe is twofold: to write down everything that's said. You spell it the best you can. Sometimes it comes out as what sounds like gibberish, and then you look it up later and, oh shit, it's a language.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Sometimes it's just gibberish, and sometimes it starts with gibberish and then it starts to flow. It's like everything else. That's just the way it works. The other function of the scribe is just as a second. So if the person that is under, so to speak, you hear Bella. The person that is under is in danger, or is in trouble, or is having a very frightening moment that needs to break. That's their job, is to get them out, clear the area, take control of the situation, take control of the spirit. So you need to be. The scribe needs to have some knowledge of banishing and taking control.
And there's a third function also, too. Especially if we're in ritual, we always assign somebody to be the watcher scribe. So they'll write things down, and they'll take note of anything that they heard or saw around the circle that came through, that the others are going to want to know, after the event. Because a lot of times if you're in full on invocation, like we were the last one, I was on fire.
Yeah.
I was on fire.
I know, you're doing great.
I literally got caught on fire by our bonfire, and there was no wind. So it was really, really, really freaking interesting, especially since we were standing probably a good 6-7 feet away from it. And the fire just loomed towards me. And thank goodness I was wearing a wool cloak.
And that's from the observers, right?
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
the fire went from going straight up in the air because there's no wind to literally bending its arc towards Tay.
Yeah.
While doing the invocation.
Yeah. Thanks, Crowley. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bornless ritual. Always fun.
But yeah.
So along with that, and channeling's kind of been a theme. Bella is just determined to walk around here and clack her nails, and she's brought me her Squishmallow.
She's wanting to play. She's bored.
This is Natasha's Squishmallow that Natasha gave her.
Yeah.
She's just like, I need a microphone. But along with channeling and everything, there's another technique called Bibliomancy.
And we're going to do some of that for you now. So, go ahead, John.
So Bibliomancy is from biblio, meaning books, and mancy, meaning divination. It's got a very long spiritual tradition. It goes all the way back to ancient Roman practice, where they used Homer and Virgil texts, the old classical writings, to predict the future. So the I Ching is also a popular text to use. Some Christians use the Bible, but you can literally do this with any book, and especially if you have a book of philosophy or a book on magical practice or something like that. It's good, but literally any book, you're just randomly opening the book, flipping through the book, letting the pages flip through your fingers, and then stop and read the first thing that your eyes land on.
So I have the I Ching sitting in front of me right now. John, what is your question?
Well, the I Ching is
the Book of Changes.
The Book of Changes. It's Eastern philosophy, and it's you can get into pretty in depth with it too. They've used coins, yarrow sticks, to use with it, and what it does is it's a dictionary of the symbolism of the coins or yarrow sticks and how you would throw them. They throw them similar to casting lots or casting runes, and it's just yarrow sticks of different sizes, lengths, and how they lay is what you divine. Same with the coins, whether they're heads up or down. Kind of goes hand in hand with some of the old claromancy things. But so you're going to ask the book a question, you're going to ask a question, and then you're going to flip through the pages and you're going to read the first thing. I don't have a question. So
I did it while you were talking. I was just like, okay, so how is the podcast going? So the abysmal repeated, if you are sincere, you have success in your heart, and whatever you do succeeds. So there you go. So
I guess we're doing good.
we're doing okay then.
Well, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you to the I Ching.
That's Bibliomancy. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's an ancient practice. Just grab a book, flip through it. Boop.
Have fun, guys. Have
You
fun.
know, you don't need to spend $28 on a tarot deck. Just grab the Reader's Digest.
And it was terrible when I first started in tarot way back in the day. I got the Crowley deck, the very first one, because I'm just, I'm a glutton for frickin' punishment. So yeah, you must have the ceremonial deck.
You bought it because it's pretty.
It is beautiful. I absolutely love it, and I do that a lot. I have probably 12 decks on the piano right now that I don't even read. I just bought them because the art is stunning. Yeah.
Rookie numbers.
I suck. But I got in a bad habit of reading before I leave the house. Don't do that. It's not wise. It becomes an obsession. But speaking of tarot, John, I think the earliest reference to date is about the game, correct? The game of tarot.
Yeah, Tarachi. Goes back to the 1400s, 1440s, 1450s, and was used, in Venice, Milan, Florence, and it was just an Italian game of trick. There's a lot of different versions of it. Probably one of the most famous tarot decks. It actually preceded all the modern decks is the Solabusca.
Stunning deck.
And it's traced to around the 19th century, but it's actually the only complete 15th century deck. Like the symbolism, they used in lieu of like the traditional what we would see, the trump cards or the major arcana or the minor arcana. They used telling the story of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. They used classical figures from classical literature, biblical figures. They take over instead of the traditional illustrations you see. But a lot of the rumors of where the Rider-Waite came from were from the Solabusca, because it was actually on display in the British Museum. And it was rumored A.E. Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, who actually illustrated the Rider-Waite deck, saw the cards of the Solabusca, and they drew their inspiration for their what would then be known as the most popular tarot deck ever, the Rider-Waite deck, which has been the foundation. I mean, there's over 100 million decks of Rider-Waite in the world. It is the most popular modern tarot deck, and almost all modern tarot decks draw at least some inspiration from the Rider-Waite, whether it's the illustrations, the way the cards are illustrated, or the figures are depicted. Most everything comes from Rider-Waite. And if you take a tarot class, or if you read a tarot book on how to read the tarot, they're going to reference the Rider-Waite. So when people ask, well, what's the first deck I should try? Not everybody likes it or feels like drawn to those illustrations. Some are, some aren't. But it's a really good deck to have, even if you don't end up using it as your primary deck, because that way you can have a familiar reference tool while you're taking the class or reading through the book and better familiarize yourself.
Or using the cheat sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we carry some cheat sheets at the shop, but they're based on that deck. So, I mean, you can adapt them to any other deck, but like he's saying, you kind of need to see the symbolism, and you need to see why it's laying out the way that it is and where they came up with the foundation. So,
well, the theory for Solabusca is that it was largely, it looks like one thing, but there's a lot deeper meaning, and that's very similar to the modern tarot. But there was a lot of hermetic or alchemical references in the Solabusca. And you can read about it. It's way too much to get into an hour-long podcast when we're trying to cover other things, but it's a fascinating story. I highly recommend looking into it. We do carry a copy of the Solabusca. It's a little pricier, but the cards are absolutely beautiful. I don't use that one for divination, but I do have it just basically for its historical aspect. And if you're a fan of Renaissance paintings, it's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful piece of artwork to look through. And there's a book put out by one of our European publishers called The Game of Saturn, and that goes into great detail on the Solobuska and its history. It was never really they say it was never really a divination tool. It was more of a Torachi, or it was more of a showcase of classical, history and art. But it's a stunning deck. But if you're just starting, like it or not, the Rider-Waite is going to be your best place to start. Believe it or not, our neighbor was a professor at Marywood University in Scranton, and he has written probably one of the better introduction to tarot books that I've ever read. It's, what is it?
Tarot, the 22 Steps. Goodness, she's loud. She wants to talk about Doug. Hi, Doug. But yeah, it's oh God, I can't remember the exact name. I've got it laying around here somewhere.
It's the little blue tarot book,
yeah.
And it's excellent. And he breaks it down, and his writing style is very conversational, and it's not full of lofty adjectivitis. It's really, really good, and a really good place to start. I mean, there's a lot of tarot classes you can take online, and there's a lot of different approaches to the tarot, and we've touched on that before, where you have the classical meanings of the card, whether they're reversed or right side up, however you want to. I'm sure there's a fancy term that I've forgotten. I forget everything, but
it's because we're talking.
And there's some decks that you don't read the reverses in. The current deck I'm using, the Night Sun Tarot. I don't read it reversed, and I don't know why. I just, it doesn't like it. So, and other decks like the Rider-Waite or the Morgan Greer. I used the Morgan Greer for years, which is directly based off of Rider-Waite, but the illustrations are slightly different. The colors are a little different because I've been an intuitive reader. So I learned the classical way to read, and it just seemed so regimented and rote, and like it wasn't flowing. Intuitive, you kind of, the way I did it is I took a card, I meditated on that card. I spent, a week or more looking at the card, and every day, just spend some time. Okay, what does this mean? Why? What is the meaning behind this? And yeah, I'm not really looking at the alchemical or the astrological, because that's not really something that I practice personally. We have people for that. So
exactly.
So I'm what does that card mean to me? What emotion does it elicit? Okay. And then as you work your way through all the deck, how do these cards, when they correspond to each other, do they tell a story? And that's how I read. And there's a lot of readers like that. You should learn the classical way first. I did. It took time learning what each trump card, what their traditional meaning, but what each suit traditionally means. And then if you need to branch out, you branch out. That's how this works.
There's this great piece in the book by Lon Malo Duquette, Allow Me to Introduce an Insider's Guide to the Occult, where he writes, about the tarot. And it was so beautiful and so well thought out, and made you see the relationships between the cards. So if you can get a copy of this book, read the section in it. It begins with, I believe, oh goodness, let me go back here. But the music of the tarot was my favorite part, because he actually made you see that it's a family, and that there are relationships playing out in that deck, and it makes you read it a little differently. And then he goes through in here, what the trumps are, and what the suits in the minor arcana, the 4 suits are in the minor arcana, and why. And he goes well in depth. We covered this in one of our last podcast, where we were talking about, what the wands stand for, what the swords stand for, the disc, all that stuff. And it's just amazing. He takes you on a journey in this little piece, and it's just a few pages long in the book. It's like maybe 2 or 3 sections, and then Music of Tarot is about 4 or 5 pages. And it's just brilliant. It's just one of the most brilliant things I've ever read.
Yeah. Yeah, Lon's great, and any book by Lon I recommend. I haven't read one that's been bad, but Allow Me to Introduce is one of the books we put into the hands of people that are seriously, seeking some information and just kind of need an overview. It's a little bit more, Psychic Witch is good. It's a good place. Matt Oren's got a great book. There's a lot of good exercises in it. I think if you're leaning more towards the ceremonial side, that Lon might be a better answer. But Bella is just enjoying this podcast, walking around and making noise.
I think she has to potty.
We'll wrap it up soon, baby. But one thing we touched on in the beginning was omens, and I wanted to speak a little bit more about that because, like all newcomers, like everything is magic and everything is an omen. And I saw bird poop on my car. What does this mean? Omens don't work that way. They do and they don't. It's not going to be a mundane thing when you see an omen, and you're not going to be looking for it. You're not going to be expecting it. It's something that just happens. And maybe you've gone through something that's difficult, or you're having a difficult time with something, or you've been reaching out to a deity in particular. And maybe you see a symbol of that deity appear as you're driving into work, and it just you'll feel it. You won't need to ask somebody on the internet, was this an omen? What does this mean? You're going to know what that meant, because when you see it, it's going to elicit a physical internal response inside you. You're going to, I was thinking about my goddess, and then I saw an owl. An owl is her symbol, and I was asking for this. How did the omen appear to you? Did it appear to be a positive or a negative thing, or was it a neutral thing, or how did it feel inside? Right? What did you get from that? It's very similar to Bibliomancy when you crack open the book and boom, there's the sentence. What was the first reaction you had when you saw it? That's your answer, what the omen meant.
You should have a visceral reaction. And I always say it's like raising the hackles. Like every hair on my body sometimes will stand up when I know that they're speaking. And it's like I'm frozen in that space for several seconds. Sometimes not even realizing how long I've been standing there. But that's exactly it. He's right. You're going to lose kind of a track of everything around you when an actual omen is presenting itself to you. You're sort of just going to be caught in that moment.
Yep. And you'll see another one of your deities is represented by a hawk. You have asked a question, earlier that day or later that night, and you were in a quandary, and you had reached out to whatever deity or ancestor that is represented by that, and lo and behold, you don't normally see a hawk there. It's not something that's there's not a hawk nest in your tree in your front yard. Like, this is unusual. It's just something you don't see all the time, and then boom, right, and you feel it. And so you have to go off that feeling that you got. Nobody can tell you what that omen means because it wasn't for them.
It's personal.
It was for you.
Yep.
And this is one of the oldest methods of divination, right? Reading omens, reading the way that they used to, what was it, starlings, the way they would fly in patterns in the sky, and then they would form shapes. And, humans have been using divination techniques since we could rub two sticks together. I mean,
absolutely.
This is not something new. The danger is thinking that everything's an omen and that everything has a magical, spiritual meaning to you. And it's easy to fall into that, and it's like we talked about the newly spiritual, the newly religious, the new vegan, the new anything. Anytime you're into something new, you're super, super excited about it. And everybody, I'm sure we annoy people. Have you listened to our podcast?
Yes.
Ooh. But, after a few months, the shine wears off.
Yes.
And you just kind of have to keep yourself grounded. And that's why grounding is so important, what we talked about earlier. And you have to go out and reground yourself. This isn't like shadow work. It's not something you do once. It's not one and done. It's a continuous process of keeping yourself centered, because sooner or later, everything's an omen. And then they don't have any meaning anymore.
Right. It's a devotion. You have to be devoted. And then the more that you're devoted and the more you open yourself up to the messages that are coming through when you actually do feel them, the more they'll help you write your path and lead your life in a more connected way. You don't feel so alone. And I know that through solo practice, that's the one thing that got me through in my most depressing times was being out in the woods with them and hearing them and feeling them and knowing that I was definitely, even though it was just my human behind sitting on the ground in my grove in the middle of North Carolina, that I was not alone.
Yeah.
I was literally surrounded by them.
Yep. And they're not always shiny fuzzies, a lot of us, what some people would call dark, right? But you find more comfort in that because it just feels genuine and light, dark, indifferent.
Yeah, it's all magic.
Spirit is going to come to you, if you're receptive.
Yeah.
But you have to, at the same time, keep your feet on the ground. And it's really difficult to meter that. And I mean, even for practitioners that have been doing this for a long time, it's easy to fall into that trap, where everything is magical and everything is instantaneous. And I wish it to happen so it manifests. That's not how it works.
No.
You have to constantly police yourself. We have to police ourselves. We're human. We fail. We have frailties, right? So
it takes vision and it takes work.
Just because you learned how to cleanse and clear in your first lesson doesn't mean that you're not ever going to do that. You're going to do that all the time. Yes. You're going to constantly meditate and settle yourself. And this is one of the first skills they're taught because it's one of the most important.
Yeah.
And especially when you get into divination, because it's really easy to fly off into the ether, losing all common sense.
And someone will say some crazy crap to you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God. then you're off on the hunt. It's like, and it was nothing. They're just messing with you, and that's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I did a channel. Was it about 2 months ago? Mm-hmm. And an entity named Sea-Tree came through. And if you know anything about Sea-Tree, and I didn't before this, but it is one of the Goetia. And he had some things to say, but one of the most memorable was about a meridian in Tay that needed to be mended. It was a meridian, similar to what acupuncture or acupressure meridians, going from the right ankle to the left knee up to the left shoulder. That meridian was blocked and it needed to be repaired. He put it was broken.
Yeah.
And so we got some help with that. And that's just kind of how this. I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. He just all of a sudden came in, and a lot of times it happens in the most inopportune moments.
Yes.
And Tay will be like, knock it off.
Yeah. Go to sleep.
Stop it.
I'm watching a movie.
Or in the middle of the workday. Hey, stop it. I'm like, hey, this shit wants to talk.
Well, tell him to shut up and hold it. Send me a message.
You kind of have to have voicemail.
Text me.
Like, thank you for your call. We'll get back to you later. But in our coven, we had kind of divided ourselves into who does what. And it wasn't like an assignment. It was what you were more inclined to do. So what came more natural for you, and like everybody can do this. This isn't superpowers, super friends. Everybody can do this. Everybody can do this. Literally, everybody can do this. But some people have a natural aptitude. Some people don't. Like, I have tried to learn astrology at least 1,000 times. And Lindsay will stand up there and like, oh God, I feel like a freaking idiot. And she'll be like, I don't really know. I'm like, oh, shut up. She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
Just read my chart, and then she rattled it off to me without a single book.
Right off the top of her head. Yeah. I mean, she's amazing. And keeps her humility at the same time. That's a practitioner, folks.
Yeah. Humility is power.
But this is what I'm talking about. You have people that have different aptitudes. And so a good organization, a good coven is going to encourage that. They're going, okay, because divination is a big part, right, in what we do. It's a huge part of our spiritual practice. It's a sacred thing. And if you have someone that's inclined towards a specific kind of divination, that should be encouraged, and they should get the help they need to find the resources they need to develop that, just like a muscle, so it's stronger, right? So that's why it's really good to find like-minded people, because you have ideas to bounce people off. I'm going to bounce people off my ideas.
I like that idea. Actually, can we try it?
You know what the hell I meant. But yeah,
boing, boing, boing.
Yeah, that's a great visual. It is important, and it's important to have, if you don't have that, then come to the store and hang out. You'll find one.
God, yes.
There are people looking for others
crazy.
all the time. And it's even if you only have, one person, that's fine. Or even if you're not close and you just talk on the phone, have some ideas to bounce off each other, or have that other person to help you keep grounded so you don't fly off into woo land.
Yeah.
Right. Is this really easy to fly off into woo land?
Yes.
Because when you're telling this to a muggle or someone who doesn't practice, they think we're all full of woo.
And
right?
they think we're all Harry Potter.
And they'll go back to their fantasy football league.
Disgusting. Yeah. This is not an audition for charmed people. Come on.
Yeah. But it is a practice. It is a spiritual practice. It is sacred. And find out what you're good at. If you've tried with tarot and it just doesn't feel natural to you,
hey,
that's okay. Try something else. Try bibliomancy. Try automatic writing. Try throwing runes. Maybe throw the bones. Look up clarimancy. We have who is it that does the clarimancy? Jeffrey does the clarimancy boards. Clarimancy is a very ancient tradition, and it involves a lot of different traditions put together, and it's
casting of lots.
It's incredible what he can get. And he does the sand divination.
I was mad at him for days.
The sand divination is amazing.
It was great.
If one form of divination doesn't speak to you and doesn't like you understand the concepts, okay, I've educated myself on this as generally as I can, but it just doesn't fit with me. I just don't have a connection to it. It's okay. Not everybody can play every instrument either, right? So find something that does fit with you and develop that. Maybe you're really good at astrology and you like number crunching and drawing charts. To me, it reminds me of 8th grade algebra class, and I just shut down. Fuck this.
No.
Yeah, and I understand.
I'm not solving for why. Why would I solve for why?
And I get mathematics is the universe explained, right? So everything is math.
Order the universe.
Probably why I went to literature class.
That's funny.
But I just had a terrible math teacher. I'm going to blame it on him because he was a douchebag. It's his fault, not my fault, because I suck at math.
But in the immortal words of Casey Kasem, no matter what you do, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
And for those of you born outside of the 1900s, Casey Kasem was on the radio and did the top 100 every week.
Yeah, every week. He was always doing the New Year's Eve. From New York City.
He looked like a used car salesman. He was really cool. Everybody loved Casey Kasem. And, back in our day, that's who we relied on.
In our day. Good Lord.
Back in the 1900s.
What has happened? You're from the 1900s, aren't you? Yeah.
I am from the 1900s.
Some kid said that to me a few weeks ago.
Fuck that little fucker.
Yes, I am. And we know how to kill you more ways than one, kid.
Mm-hmm. I have to translate because Tay assumes everyone is from the 1900s and knows who the fuck Casey Kasem is.
Hey, he's still on the radio, which he's dead, so it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, his voice is still on the radio.
Oh.
Casey Kasem's been dead for I don't know how long.
Oh my God!
But yeah, that was cool. Is Soul Train still on? I used to watch Soul Train all the time. I love Soul Train.
I love that show.
What was it? What was the other one with a bunch of Karens doing?
Oh, I hated that one. American Bandstand.
Oh my God,
that was
show
disgusting.
I would keep American Bandstand on the last 5 minutes just so Soul Train would come on because oh my God, Soul Train was the shit.
Loved it.
That dance line, yes.
Oh my God. Don was so smooth.
Sorry, I'm from Flint, Detroit. It's in my blood. I can't help it.
Oh.
But so circling way back out of this.
Walk down memory lane, radio world.
Yeah. Sorry, old people get confused easily, and we have to be reminded. Okay, go back to what you were talking about. We need to
do some divination and give us some direction.
What's
tonight.
my name? But divination, Sacred practice, lots and lots, and there's more than what we mentioned, right?
Yeah,
This is
there's a lot
just
more.
this is literally scratching the surface, and there is so many different techniques and traditions. Find something that fits well. If you have an interest in divination, find something that you're interested in, and if you get into it and then later decide I just don't feel this shit, try something else.
Like me with tarot, I make people cry, so I don't like reading it anymore.
But I mean, it's good to at least have the general knowledge. It's kind of like knowing your history, right? It's part of being a practitioner. Is it if you don't know how to do, say, astrology, at least have a general understanding of its purpose and its method. You don't need to know the intricacies of what house is what and your rising signs and sun sign and moon sign and God, I'm already confused. But you know what the hell they're talking about when they say astrology. Like,
And it's a good insight, too.
I have some idea of what you're talking about, So that especially if you're sitting with an astrologer, some of the things that they're talking about will make a little bit more sense. And ask questions.
Yes. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions.
There is no knowledge gained like that from an actual practitioner.
Yes.
So if you have a Lindsay in front of you and you have questions about it and she's doing your chart for you, ask her, what does that mean? She's going to know off the top of her head because this is her bread and butter, right? Ask the tarot reader, when you're done, reading, what does that mean? Why are you getting that from that card? Not to challenge them. Well, feel free to challenge them if you need to, but more for your own education. Like, oh, okay, so that makes sense, right? And like whenever I read, I would explain, this is why I get this. Okay. It might start off slow and then all of a sudden the channel hits and it's flowing like a waterfall and then it's over. Right. But when I would lay the cards and after the reading, I would go through each card. Okay. So remember what I said to you, this is what this means. This is why, this is where I get this from. Okay. You see this symbolism here interacts with that symbolism, The three of them in context tell a story.
Yeah.
And that's where the story comes from. That's where I got that from. And it may make sense to you, may not, but at least you understand the method by which, that divination took place.
Exactly.
And
there are no stupid questions. So
well, there are plenty of stupid questions.
I had to. You see how I drew him out there?
There are plenty. That is such a false statement. There are fucking stupid ass questions. But it's okay. Ask the stupid ass questions because we all ask the stupid ass questions.
You may get ridiculed. I can't promise you, but
Yeah. But that's part of it too, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think we've kind of come to our hour marker, first day with new lips.
And Bella's
really got to go outside, and
she's
I am
inconsolable.
getting stink eye from hell. But if you've made it this far, thank you guys. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, give us a good review, and thank you so much for listening.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode of In the Weeds, and we hope you didn't have to pick too much pucker brush off your cloak after visiting with us here. If you liked the episode, please follow, subscribe, and share. And if you're really kind, leave a positive review. Be sure to tune in next week as we publish a new episode weekly. If you're in the area, stop by the store and see us. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.